Okay, guys, when we're ready, we'll start with Carve from Sky Sports News.
Gareth, you called up Dominic Solanke, Lewis Cook and Angus Gunn. How have they settled in over the past few days?
Very good. In fact, the first afternoon I saw Lewis just sat on a table having lunch with Joe Hart and Gary Cahill. I think it's a very easy squad to settle into. The senior players are very open, very welcoming. Most of the squad are young anyway, so a lot of them know each other from younger age groups. And so those guys have fitted in off the field no problem, which helps them to fit in on the field, and they're good players. So in training they look fine.
Do you think there's a chance that any of them will be involved tomorrow, or is it just a case of them coming and training with the senior squad and getting a feel for it?
Well, we have to see how the game progresses, but I won't have any hesitation in putting them on the pitch. Angus has worked with the under-21s with us. He's playing in the league. The other two, the captain of the under-20 World Cup winners and Golden Boot winner in the under-21s World Cup, so under-20s World Cup. So they've got good pedigree, and we won't hesitate to put them on the pitch.
And how close were Damari Gray and Dominic Calvert-Lewin to making the squad?
Well, they're clearly playing regularly in the Premier League. I think these two lads have warranted it on their performances with England over a long period of time, and also the other night in the Ukraine. So I think the message for all of the others is there's opportunity. You keep doing well. We are in a situation where we have mostly young players to pick from. That's the route we want to go. Maybe slightly different this time in that we didn't see any value in bringing a couple of senior players in just for a couple of days. But also we want some of these youngsters that have got good pedigree internationally already to have their pathway.
Ruben Loftus-Cheek is another young player, of course, who made a very big impact on Friday night. What has he been like over the past few days?
Quiet as usual. I think he's obviously has taken a lot from the game. He found it a great experience, felt he was learning throughout it, and it reminds. I mean, it's incredible, really, that he's had so few 90-minute appearances in the league that we're putting him into that sort of environment. But we believe in him. He did really well, but now sometimes the first game is easier because nobody's aware of you. You go in with the point to prove. The fact is there's a point to prove every time you go on the pitch. That's the same for us as a team. There's been a good response to the performance the other night, but we'll be judged again on what happens tomorrow, and we're in for a much sterner test, I think, because this Brazilian team are, well down the road in terms of knowing what their best team is. Very clear way of playing, some outstanding individuals, immense physical presence. So it's a different sort of challenge for us. But as you'd expect, we're playing the best team in the world who've annihilated everybody in the South American qualification, which is the hardest way to the finals. So we have to be spot on to have a chance of winning the game.
Eric Dyer was captain on Friday night. What do you think he brought to the role?
Well, I think it's a good experience for him. I think being the captain on the pitch is one element of being a captain, and then showing leadership around the rest of the time that we're in camp is another part. So the on-field part, I think, might help to raise the level of your performance, the level of ownership of and responsibility. But the bigger picture is, again, that we want some of these young lads to feel the responsibility a bit more. And Eric is, the way that he trains, the way that he understands the game, he has good tactical understanding on the field. He's a good sounding board for me as a coach when you want to have discussions around tactical problems on the pitch or ideas of how we might solve problems. I like to throw that to the players sometimes just to see what their thinking is. We have our solutions, but if they don't 100% believe in that, sometimes it's good to listen to what they're thinking. So he's somebody that, from when I worked with him first with the under-21s, his upbringing at Lisbon is slightly different to some young players. They were asked to make decisions on the field a lot more as a young player growing up.
And Joe Hart will be back tomorrow night. Gary Cahill could be back. Will Eric Dyer still be captain tomorrow night?
Yeah, Eric will captain the team tomorrow. Yeah.
Just turning to Brazil, you said in your words you thought they were the best team in the world at the moment. Will this be the hardest test for your defence, coming up against the front three, which you expect to be Neymar, Jesus and Coutinho?
Yeah, or could be Willian as well. So, I think we have to be tactically prepared to make sure that we're ready for the game. But equally, the players you're talking about have individual technical qualities and speed and acceleration that our individuals have to be able to cope with. So we've got to make sure that we're savvy in the way that we're set up, but also in the end, you have to be able to deal with those players on a one against one basis at times as well, and that will be a challenge that we haven't faced up to now.
When it comes to Neymar, how do you stop him?
Well, he is clearly one of the best players in the world at this moment in time. So you have to have the team set up in the right way. We've got to make sure that we're ready for the transitions, because Brazil on the counter-attack, it's one of their strong suits. So we have to make sure that we're ready for that. And then individually, you have to defend well against him. You've got to show patience, but you've got to have certain physical attributes to be able to cope with him as well. So selection becomes important around that as well.
And do you think any player in the world is worth £200 million?
Well, if there was to be one, it would be him.
We were at Brazil's training session yesterday at Craven Cottage, and speaking to some of the players afterwards, Philippe Coutinho especially was saying that he'd been very impressed with the way that England had developed under you. He described England as technically very strong, tactically very strong, very intense. And he also went on to say that as far as he was concerned, England is starting to play like Brazil. How much credit do you take for that in England's development? Is that something that you see?
I think we're a bit different. I think Brazil, they have incredible individual technical players. Their style of play is a little bit different to a Germany or a Spain. I think South American football is a bit different. They have incredible, whenever we play them from under 16s right the way through, they have incredible physical athletes. When we've been to youth tournaments, we're swapping and changing players to keep the team fresh. They bang the same 11 out game after game after game. So they have incredible physical robustness. And I think you see that with the South American players that have played here. Like Suarez is another one who can rattle the games out, gets injured, comes back into the team. So there's something about their development pathway, the number of matches they play in the leagues, that is very different. And I do think South American players, you see it with Sanchez as well, that they have this physical robustness, which in tournaments again is important. So I think we're a bit different. I think we are really early stages of what we're trying to do. We have a lot of hard work ahead of us, and the other night was a really encouraging step for individuals and for the team. But we've got a big game tomorrow, and we'll be judged on that.
There's been an interesting debate today in the newspapers about England's records at penalty shootouts. I think England have lost 7 out of 8. Why do you think that is? Is that just a mental thing?
A technique under pressure. It's about being able to execute a technique under pressure. In the beginning of that run, very few matches went to penalty shootouts, so it was a fairly unique experience. You didn't face it very often with your club. We had FA Cup games that went to 4 or 5 replays instead of having penalty shootouts. So we were used to playing hundreds of matches on boggy pitches, but we weren't used to being under that sort of pressure. Then, clearly after a period of defeats, then there's something a little bit more to it. Obviously, I played in a team that won a quarter-final on penalties as well. So we had players who were regular penalty takers, who executed their penalties brilliantly in the quarter-final and the semi-final. So it tends to be the guys that aren't used to being in that situation for their club that then have to have a strategy for dealing with it. Clearly, it's something we are looking at very closely. We have to have a plan for that. We also have to take into consideration the new format that might be involved. Our under-17s went through that in their European Championships. So there's a lot of different areas we can work on within that. We can put players into pressure scenarios, which I think generally anyway is good. Also, frankly, we've got to be good enough to get to that stage. You know, it's not penalties that's knocked us out of the last 2 tournaments. So the first and foremost, we've got to make sure we have a clear way of playing, that everybody knows their roles and responsibilities, and that under pressure in the 90 or 120 minutes that we are able to adjust and adapt to that, to be able to compete against the very best. Then there's a piece of work that goes alongside that we need to do, that we're prepared for what happens beyond that.
Carve, can we have one more and then take questions elsewhere on the floor?
Between now and next summer, obviously, there's going to be a lot of debate about who should be in the England squad. In your mind, do you have a list of players who are guaranteed to be going to Russia next summer?
Well, what I have is I have a list that if I had to pick the squad tomorrow, I know who that would be. Equally, in 6 months' time, that can change because of form, because of new players emerging. So I've got to be a little bit open-minded. But I think we're constantly reviewing. We have we watch the players very closely with their clubs, and you've got a succession plan for each position as to who would be first, second, third choice at this moment in time, and further down, because in some positions you lose more players, and that's constantly updated. So yeah, there is an element of form with clubs that plays a part, because you want players to be going into games at their very best. When you come to a summer, form important towards the end of the season, but then there's a gap, and so it's the physical attributes become important, and what you see in training, but also who we feel are our best players in each position, who are capable of performing on the biggest stage.
Next question.
An England fan's World Cup journey tends to begin filled with hope, quickly sinks into disappointment and ends in despair. We don't tend to pack more than 2 pairs of pants no matter where we go, because we know we're coming home early. But this year feels a little bit different. How much can we expect from you, and in essence, how much in a pack for Russia?
I think that if I sat here a month ago, that I didn't see so much hope then. So I've got to make sure I balance everything out. I think what we've been able to do in the last couple of matches is give opportunities to people, involve some young players, and I think that, coupled with what's happened with our under-17s and our other development teams, has shown people that we have some good players in this country. It's also put a broader debate around opportunities for young English players, because some of what we've had to do is ridiculous, really. We're playing, when Phil Jones went off the other night, we're playing Germany with a squad that have got 80 caps between them. But that's the moment in time we are at in English football. That is one of the barriers that we've got to overcome, and so maybe we've got to approach it slightly differently, and give some of these youngsters the opportunity, even though you can wait, and you'd like to say, well, they've got to earn the right to play, they've got to play a couple of seasons in the Premier League, but I don't think we have that luxury. And also, you know, who we feel are our best players in each position, who are capable of performing on the biggest stage. So yeah, there is an element of form with clubs that if they're good enough, then I think we've got to give them the belief and the confidence to go in and perform. So for me, it was an exciting performance because I saw young players expressing themselves, and that's what I want to see. Also, coupled with that, we know there's a lot of hard work ahead to make this a successful team.
Ian Dennis? One more, and then we go to Ian Dennis.
Traditionally, youth players are asked to look up to senior players and emulate them. But we've got a little bit of a role reversal here. Should our senior players be looking up to our World Cup winning youth?
Well, you can have that discussion with them. I think what young players do is they bring energy, they bring enthusiasm, no cynicism. So I think that's healthy for everybody. I think if you spoke to any of the staff or players this week, that has been the environment. The innocence of youth can be wonderful. In some instances and situations, it can be a real advantage. Maybe in others, it can be a disadvantage. So we've got to try and play on the strengths of it and help them as much as possible through the difficult moments, which for sure they're going to have and we're going to have. But we think it's the right route to go. We think it's a path that can pay benefits for us as a country moving forward. And I've said before, whether that's next summer or beyond, and whether that's for me as a manager or other people, I think we've got to make decisions that are right for England. And I think we believe that that's what we're doing at the moment.
Gareth, when you reflect on Friday night, what was the most pleasing aspect for you?
The performance, the fearlessness with which we approached the game with the ball, because I think generally we've been tactically without the ball pretty well organised throughout. We've conceded 3 goals in qualifying. It was the best record in Europe. But I never felt, bar a couple of matches, that we really flowed with the ball, that we showed expression, and that we were positionally, tactically right with the ball. The other day I thought we were, I thought the things that we'd worked on in training appeared on the pitch, and that's always rewarding for us as a coaching team when what you see in the match situation is what you've worked on during the week. I think that's been the same a few times when we've played the 3 at the back, and that's why we've reverted back to it. So to see then youngsters go and there's 2 parts. One is that it's only one game, so we don't get carried away. The other is I saw more in one game from some of those youngsters than you might see in many more games from other players. So you've got to be able to go in and have that impression, or be able to make that impression, and some of our guys did.
And if that performance was to take a lot out of the players, how does that affect your thought process as to how many changes you make for the Brazil game?
Well, we had an extra day recovery from what we would normally have in the qualifying campaign, so that was helpful. I've got to get the balance right, because the structure of the team was good, so I don't want to make too many changes. But also there's a lot of competition for places, and this is an opportunity to give other players opportunity as well. So you're trying to balance that off. But again, I'm back to, this is a moment where we should experiment a bit. We're playing a top team, but we don't have many opportunities to try things or try individual players. So it would be wrong not to take those opportunities.
And finally, from me, just is twofold really. How does Eric Dyer, in terms of his captaincy, differ to the other 4 available captains who you've named? And what sort of skipper are you looking for?
Yeah, I go back to, it's not necessarily just the approach on the pitch in the 90 minutes that's key for me. It's the culture we have around the whole team, and that isn't going to be set by one player, and I don't want it to be. That requires everybody to step up and take responsibility, and I think where Eric has real strengths. I talked earlier about his tactical understanding, his ability to solve problems on the field, to slot into the defence if others have, if Stones or Maguire the other night stepped forward, Dyer's the one in covering. He recognises those moments within the game. So yeah, you're looking for people who set the right tone in their approach to the session in the gym, the training session, the recovery. You want people that the rest of the group respect because they're good. Their professionalism is of a high level. Their belief in what's possible is of a high level, and that with the England captaincy comes a certain responsibility of being able to influence other people outside of our group as well. So I think Eric is mature enough to handle all of those things.
Okay, we've got 4 more waiting to ask questions, and we'll start with ESPN Brazil. Sorry, Dano.
Gareth, do you imagine, in terms of style of game, do you imagine something very different between Brazil and Germany? And do you fear that many of the youngsters, especially, feel a little bit intimidated by facing Brazil with so many superstars and everything?
Oh, I think our players think it's a great opportunity. They're looking forward to the game. You want to test yourself against the very best. So I think the style is different. I think Germany are a well-oiled machine in the way that they work. Very slick into passing. Positionally where they're going to be. So tactically, you know the sorts of problems you're going to face. With Brazil, a lot of the problems that you face are because of the ability of individuals, which is less predictable and is less. You can't prepare for that in quite the same way as some of the other teams we face. They have good organisation, since the new coach came in. Very difficult to score goals against. They don't commit as many men forward, perhaps. They don't need to because of the quality of their attacking players, but it means that they're less exposed to counter-attacks. We'll have to work really hard to make chances. But also I believe if we're brave with the ball, we can keep the ball against them. They press pretty well, but I think we have players that can use the ball, and we've got to make sure that we show that fearlessness to not just sit there and defend all night. I think we showed against Germany, it was pretty much 50-50 in possession on our data. And I think we can do the same again against Brazil for certain. So then it's how well we use that possession that's key. And making sure that we're ready if we lose possession, that we're in good position to deal with transitions.
You've worked with many of these players at under 21 level, now at senior level. Using Eric Dyer, assuming as his captain, as the example, how do you feel he's developed since then under you, and watching him grow as a player, how he's developed?
Yeah, he started with us as a centre-back, very young, but always had a good view of the game. Has developed in terms of confidence. Maurizio brought him here and showed faith in him, put him into the team. I think we've seen in the last couple of days what can happen to a young player when you have that faith in them, to a young person in any walk of life, frankly. We all need an opportunity and we all need somebody to believe in us. I think with Eric, he had first team opportunities at Lisbon, but then there's a difference when somebody, a football club comes and says to you, right, we're prepared to pay this amount of money to buy you, and a manager puts you in the team. I think immediately you think, wow, I was at that club for a long time and I was working my way through, but you're not viewed as the apprentice anymore or the youth product. You're viewed as a first team player because you're arriving with a different sort of status. And I think youngsters gain belief from that and gain confidence, and he has. And so, we felt that when he was younger, he still he could take more responsibility. He could show he could communicate more on the field, show more presence on the pitch, and I think with confidence that he's gained of being involved in big matches and being given that responsibility with his club and with his country, that he's just matured through a path which a lot of young players go through.
Okay, last 2 questions.
Hi, Gareth. We're talking a lot about the pathway for young players. Phil Foden is someone that there have been several reports in recent days about him potentially playing under 21 football early next year. What is your plan for him, and do you think he's an individual that justifies being fast-tracked given how good he's looked at under 17 level?
Well, I think we've known about Phil from under 14 level, so he's not a surprise to us. I think we've always got to bear in mind what's right for the player on that individual development, and especially when they're at that age, make sure we liaise really closely with the club. He's had a long period of time, for example, this month, away from his club development with England. A lot of individual attention within an outstanding team. So we've got to manage that and make sure that we make those steps at the right time. Also, we've got other very good players in the age groups just above him who maybe warrant an opportunity as well. So we've got to piece all those threads together. But at the right moments, we've fast-tracked individual players into age groups above. So Ryan Sessegnon is one who's played in up. Mason Mount last season, Chalobah, Dujon Sterling went up with the under-19s. So we've always looked at what's right for each team, but what's right for the individual and their own development. And Phil is, Sancho this month has gone with the 19s because he had less time with the 17s away from his club last month. So we've got to piece all those things together very carefully, and always with the younger ones in combination with their club, because they're working with them all the time and they can give us good feedback on where the player is in his focus and his physical development at any given time.
Finish with Fox Italia.
One different question. Tonight, Italy will play against Sweden, and what do you think about this match? And can you imagine one World Cup without Italia, without Italy?
Well, what I think is I'm glad I'm not involved in it, because I'm watching the playoffs, and as a coach and as a team, you're up to your neck with pressure. So, although most experiences are good, that's one I'm not sad to be missing. It's whichever team doesn't go. Both teams have a history of being involved in major tournaments. Sweden, we've played in several World Cups and European Championships, so they are always a dangerous opponent. It would be an incredible story if Italy weren't to be involved, but Holland have not qualified. Chile, after an incredible few years, for them not to qualify, I think is a huge story as well. So. And Italy were unfortunate to have Spain in their group, so to win the group was a really tough challenge. And then when you're in the playoffs, you're in the lap of the gods as to which players you have available in that month, and find margins of winning and losing. I always think with Italy they'll find a way. So, but we'll see, because. The situation that the tie is balanced in is probably favours Sweden at the moment.
Thank you very much.